I'm in my kitchen today because I want to talk about something that's very passionate with me, and that's the importance of food. Very many people go to the supermarket. We found it's very convenient and we buy the food from the supermarket. We can get everything we need. And if you've been a long-term watcher of my channel, you'll understand through some of the interviewees that I have had and some of the stuff that I've been talking about, how I feel it's very important to move away from highly industrial processed food and come back to much more natural food, and food actually from probably artisan food producers. And the reason I say that, and I know there'll be like shock horror, but that's so expensive. And you're right, it isn't cheap, because food has been industrialized at such an extent that the cost of food has been artificially reduced. And so you don't know what you're getting in the food. And one of the worries now is that the mRNA stuff they put into the medical intervention that we had over the last few years, which we've discovered has not been the most healthiest option for people, is likely to be put into animals because that's the new technology. And I'm very dubious and I'm very suspicious of that. Now, I can't say whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and it's not for me to say. I'm not in the industry, and I don't know whether that's happening yet. But we do know that there's a lot of animals that are feeding on food that has got pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. We know that animals, when they're highly industrialized, that they're being given in order to produce the quantity of product that they need. So say from a herd of cattle, of dairy cows, lots of antibiotics. And that is coming into the food chain. And I don't think that's terribly healthy. There's a lot of toxins and poisons in there that we're getting. Plus the fact that in the processing of food, in the big manufacture of food, a lot of the nutrients, the vitamins and the minerals are stripped out of that food, and it's no longer very healthy for us to eat that. So because of that, I thought one of my favorite things is cheese. Now, I know you might say, as some people said, but Richard, that's a processed food. And it's true, it does go through a process. That's not milk straight from the cow or the goat. It is processed into nuggets of cheese. But if it's done in a holistic and traditional fashion, you're still getting most of those minerals and vitamins that are in the milk to begin with. So I've gone and looked on a place to see if I could buy some artisan cheeses and see if there really is any kind of difference in flavour. And is it going to be any healthier for me than buying cheese from the supermarket, which is, of course, by default, has to be manufactured on a huge scale. So has the cheese been left long enough? Is it from one herd of cows, or is it an amalgamation of lots of different milks that have come in? So I've particularly chosen 3 different cheeses. This one's called Old Rowan. I think that's how it's pronounced. A raw cow's milk, raw milk, so not pasteurised, not homogenised, from one herd of cows. So in the same field, and so they're eating the same meadow grass that each of the cows. It's not coming from here, there, you don't know. And hopefully, and I can't tell you for sure, whether these cows have got too much antibiotics in and all of that. But if it's a smaller herd, then the chances are there's less problems with that herd than if you've got massive numbers. So that's one of the cheeses. Another one here is St. Andrew's Cheddar, made with unpasteurised cow's milk and wrapped in cheesecloth. This is a bigger one. I bought a bigger one than that. Now, I should point out these cheeses are not cheap. Of course, you can buy, as I said before, the price of food in the supermarket is artificially low, but is it good for you? That is the question. And this one is Havard cheese from Wales. I think this is Patrick Holden's, who's part of the Sustainable Trust, which sustainable is a dodgy old word these days. But that, again, I have actually visited his farm, and this is his cheese. It does have a little bit of mould on it, but that's actually natural. It's part of the process, and it's good mould. So I'm going to have a little try of this cheese and see what it's like. And I've obviously tried all these cheeses. Oops. The thing about this is they are tastier, they're richer, they're much more full of flavour. They ought to be because you're paying a lot more. But the reason I'm thinking about this is, as I said before, it's about localism. It's about bringing back into our diet as much organic food as we can, and food as where possible, local to our environment. We all know, perhaps we don't, that honey, and I've got some honey over here, actually supplied by my logman. My logman, for my wood burning stove, he has bees and they're local. So if you have hay fever, for example, if you eat local honey, it gets rid of it. I know that's a fact because a friend of mine, Sean, he swears by it, and it gets rid of any of the hay fever that he has. And I think that's an old, like an old wives' tale, but it actually is true. And I'm interested if anyone's also got similar things. We ought to be eating from our local environment. There's no excuse really to be bringing food miles and miles away. We've got ourselves into a bit of a pickle in which we've decided that we'll eat out of season. We'll eat foods that have come from different countries. We've decided that we won't have organic and healthy food, but we'll eat processed food. And because of that, our tastes have become bland. We can't tell the difference. And it's only when you eat food that I know is more expensive, but you'd have less of it. It's so much richer in flavour. And I know the argument is, but I've got kids, we haven't got a lot of money coming in, there's a fuel crisis and all of that. But I would say it like this. Food is what keeps you healthy. If you're feeling ill and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, take these pills, but they're going to cost you £10 every month and you need to keep taking them, but you'll be okay, you'd take them, wouldn't you? But if you think about that money you're spending on pills, if you actually eat more healthily, and I'm not telling you what to do, it's entirely up to you, of course, but if you eat more healthy and spend less money on things that are less important than real food, you're going to find yourself, your gut's going to thank you for one thing, but you're going to find yourself healthier and not having to go to the doctor and get pills that have side effects. And also, by going to smaller artisan food places, food producers, they're unlikely to be using these mRNA interventions in the animals, which can transfer and muck about with your DNA in our human bodies. So although it is more expensive, and I absolutely feel the same pain myself, the flavour I can't tell you how much, the flavour is so much nicer and it's better for you. And why would you risk it, I suppose? Why would you risk the toxins and the poisons of the mass-produced food, and instead of encouraging more people to set up smaller independent businesses in which they make artisan products? Because if we have more of those doing that, then the food prices of these expensive cheeses will slowly come back down in price because there's more people doing it, and the market forces and competition would be in that direction rather than at the supermarket. So I'd be interested in your comments, and I know people will argue against me and say, but we can't afford it, we have to buy it this way, and I get it. But in this day and age in which we've had that awful medical intervention and those awful new so-called rescue packs that people have been injected with, and now if that's going into our food chain and they're potentially putting into processed food insects and bugs and mealworms and this substance they put onto fruit and veg, which isn't very healthy, I don't think we've got much option than to try and find much smaller food producers who are producing real food that will keep us healthy. Cheers.